Mhm.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the podcast. I am blessed and have the pleasure to be chatting with a new connection today, Ariele Myers. And I am so excited to talk about just the incredible knowledge she has, but also just really her mission. I mean, it shines through the work that she does, and just in recently connecting with her through a friend, I know I have so much more to learn from her, and I know you do too as the listener. So I'm so excited to welcome you, Ariel, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm sure I have a lot to learn from you too. So it's
Well,
mutual.
yeah, both
hmm
ways.
hmm
So yeah, so I'm so excited. I mean, at first I just have to say, like, the rap sheet that you have, like an integrated fertility specialist, you're a licensed acupuncturist, a certified herbalist, and of
hmm
course the founder of Wisdom of the Womb. I mean, whoa, holy cow.
hmm
Like, you are just a wealth of knowledge. So I guess I want to start with, where did this passion to support women with fertility come from? Like, where did that arise? Where did that
It's so interesting. I almost feel like it found me. And
arise?
actually, I was just talking to someone yesterday because she was a womb worker. And I was like, this isn't the kind of thing that you're like a kid and you're like, I wanna work with wombs, so
Right.
that wasn't in it for me. I was interested in alternative healing.
Okay.
Um, Always. My mom was very sick growing up. She had Crohn's disease and the doctors were kind of just like, oh, it just is what it is. And, there's no reason. It's just genetic. And I always, it wasn't conscious, but I think because of that, I always had this desire to like, I'm like an explorer. Like I want to understand like what is underneath something, like what is
Yeah.
causing something, not just like, here's what it is, deal with it.
Right.
So I think that was kind of why I became interested in alternative medicine and Western medicine, I mean, Eastern medicine. Um, but then really I was working, I had a wellness center in Hoboken and I was just treating everything from like physical to digestive to, tendinomuscular stuff. And I think it was really just that I was outside of New York City and the women in the area tended to be, professional, maybe older women who were trying to get pregnant and
Yeah.
started to come to me. And I developed relationships with some of the IVF clinics in the area. And so it just kind of evolved. Like I wasn't actually particularly interested in it
Yeah.
um, before I started just working with those women.
Sure.
Um, and so I almost see like I've had two different versions of my career. The first was when I was just kind of like really working with, in that sense, like reading labs and working with their IVF clinics and doing functional medicine and and then I started to within that feel like there's something that I'm just like not getting at here. Like for the women that and I had a really high success rate. So I could have just been like, cool, like I'm awesome, but instead I was like, like there's still those ones that like I feel like I'm just missing something.
Yeah.
Kind of simultaneously in my own life, I was like, oh, I have my career, I have my kids, I have my marriage, like, but something is still missing. And so I kind of left it all. I moved across the country, I sold my practice, and I like dove into the realm of what I would call like the feminine,
Yeah.
which is like, we can talk about that. But then I couldn't help but see fertility for that through that lens. And
Yeah.
that just kind of like opened up a whole other world for me.
That's
So I
in,
practice a lot differently now here in Colorado than I did when I was in New York.
yeah, that's incredible. And I was looking through your website and just, you know, seeing the progression and the transition too of moving from New Jersey to Colorado. And I
Mm,
guess one of the questions I have for you is, after leaving the apothecary and having had all these women, brought to you by other physicians, was there any, I don't know, like, either missing link or something that all these women you felt kind of had in common when it came to like, them trying to conceive, but they couldn't? Was there something that like kept coming up over and over and you're like, gosh, like this is what I need to hone in on and like support?
Mhm. I'll tell you, yes, I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah.
And I've tried to find like different language for it and like a way to make it like less, um, woo woo, whatever. But I was actually listening to the Andrew Huberman podcast the other day, and there was Dr. Sarah Gottfried, who wrote The Hormone Cure. She was on. She's like a Harvard, MIT physician, really well respected. And she actually said, he was talking about like, why are all these women unwell? And she goes, and I was like, yes. She goes, yeah, the patriarchy. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, she said
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yes.
it's that thing that it's almost like if you say it, you're not, sciencey enough.
Mhm.
But honestly, I do feel, and like I have different words for it. So like I could say, because my background's in Chinese medicine, I could say yin and yang, so we could call that feminine and masculine, but sometimes we're trying to get away from those kind of gender stereotype binaries, but really the energy of yin, which has for many years been associated with the feminine. Those qualities of yin have really been undervalued. Um, I would say the undervaluation of our yin qualities, which we see as the feminine, but I would say also men have those yin qualities too. And non-binary, we all have yin and yang in us. It's just the balance of it. So yeah, the patriarchy.
Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. I get it.
I know.
And simply put, simply said. So you have these incredible teas that I would love to talk about.
Mhm.
Um, I would love to know just like the inception of that. Like when did you decide to create these? Just how they work, and
Mhm.
yeah, like all the benefits. For myself, as I shared with you, I'm an individual who has chose not to go down the path of having kids, but I'm curious. I mean, I would assume I could benefit from these teas as well, just as much as those who are actively trying to conceive. So I'd
Yeah.
love to know like just everything about these teas.
Mhm.
Super
Sure.
fascinating.
Yeah. Well, so first I'll say that like I really view fertility as just um like on the continuum of our overall health.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, I think like our longevity, our vitality in the world, even just our creative, like our flow of energy through our body,
Yeah,
it's all related to our fertility. So I don't think we can just like work on our fertility, it's
yeah,
doesn't live in a vacuum, is what I
yeah.
always say. So yeah, like improving our reproductive health, whether or not we want to have children, it's just important because it is a continuation of our health. It's just like working on our overall health. The reproductive health is part of that.
Absolutely.
Um, when I had my wellness center, so initially I trained in Chinese herbs. And so I would like give my patients these like beautiful formulas of Chinese herbs, and we would order them from Chinatown and they'd be sent to them, and they would be like, I cannot drink these. Like they would taste really bad. And even like I would sometimes like make these beautiful decoctions in my kitchen and be like stirring them up, and then I'd like barf over the sink trying to drink them. So sometimes Chinese herbs just have a really strong taste.
Yeah,
Um, and then so I switched to patent formulas, which are like usually the pill forms.
yeah.
Um, but for some reason, a lot of my patients and their doctors were like, my dog is barking because there's
Oh,
something
oh,
happening
good.
outside. So we'll
Oh,
we'll see if
good.
that's not too distracting. There was something about the pills that Toshi, no, no,
No, she
no.
may love you.
I might have to close the door. Yeah, so there was something about the pills that people were like, I don't know, my doctor, it'd be like literally the same ingredients that was in the herbs, the drinking herbs, but since they were in a pill, sometimes people and doctors were just like, I don't know what it is. I feel uncomfortable with it.
Mhm,
Um, and I really did feel like it just made such a big difference to have herbs.
mhm.
So that was around the time I remember it exactly. It was we had Hurricane Sandy in
Oh,
Hoboken, and I had to move my office had like 5 feet of water, and we moved into a new space, and it had a basement, and I was like, I'm gonna make a little just practice thing here. And my kids were both going to preschool full time, so it was like I had a few hours in the day, and
yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna try my hand at making teas that are a combination of Western and Chinese herbs. So they're more palatable than Chinese herbs, and they have some more like familiar ingredients in them that people drink as tea. It's actually not tea. There's no like tea leaves in them. It's just herbs. So like raspberry leaf and
Yeah.
chamomile, dandelion, the things that you would drink as like an herbal tea.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I started giving those to my patients, and just found like their success rates with the acupuncture just went up a lot.
Wow.
So there's a different tea, I say, for different phases of your cycle, but it really is also dependent on like what's happening in your body. So if somebody has endometriosis versus PCOS,
Yeah.
versus unexplained infertility, there might be a different combination of teas.
Yeah.
Um, but usually it's like there's one that's pretty well rounded that nourishes yin. There's one that really supports like the movement of qi, so might help with ovulation more if there's more ovulatory issues.
Wow.
Um, there is one that's more blood moving and blood invigorating, so that might be better for like a endometriosis situation. And then there's womb warming, which is the most warming. So if there's like cold in the womb. So yeah, they've definitely I made the Fertile Mama first, which was, God, it must have been like 2011 or 12 when I developed that one. And I
Wow.
was initially just selling them like out of my storefront. I had my wellness center in a little storefront. And yeah, when I moved to Colorado, I was like kind of done with fertility, I thought, but I was still getting like 10 calls a week probably from different people who were referred to me. So I was like, well, let me just put everything I know online. So I built a website, I put all the products online, and then I created this course that was like basically everything besides the acupuncture, like all the information I would give to my patients, all the lifestyle tips and diet, like everything online, intending to like be done with fertility. And then
Yeah.
like famous last words, it was like, no, we're not done with you.
No.
So yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that. So, yeah, I know you also have a assessment that on your website that women can take, like a fertility assessment. So, how might that help women too? Like, I would assume that can be used to help support maybe even what types of teas are going to be best for them as well.
Mhm.
What kind of information can women get from the assessment and just in general how that can support them moving forward?
Yeah. Well, I will say that we actually have an amazing, amazing customer support team.
Mm.
So the assessment is like just the basic for women who have a really clear cut diagnosis. Like, I have endometriosis, I have
Yeah,
PCOS, I've had recurrent miscarriages.
yeah,
And so, yeah, usually they'll be recommended a bundle. So we have like an endometriosis bundle, a PCOS bundle. But we do get so many messages every day from women who are like, I have PCOS and endometriosis,
yeah,
or I have, there's a lot of women who have fibroids and fallopian tube blockage. So I will say that like the assessment is there, and it definitely, some women are definitely get what they need from that. But we also really encourage people to reach out to us. Some women will give one recommendation and we'll say, get back in touch with us in 3 months. Let us know what's shifted. Let us know what's changed. So we really want to um, kind of support people along the whole length of their journey. A
yeah.
lot of women are like, I tried the tea for a month and it didn't work. And it's like, ooh, that's what we're trying to change, is like,
Right.
it's not like the herbs are working for you. Like, I think getting out of the Western medicine headspace where we like take a pill and it either works or it doesn't,
Mhm.
we really educate and encourage women to think of it as like, we are forming a relationship with these
Yeah,
herbs that we are bringing into our body in the same way that we bring the energy of another into our body to create, when we're trying to get pregnant. So it's not like, will this fix me? It's rather like, what is the relationship that I can develop with these energies, these
yeah,
herbs of energies that I am bringing into receiving into my body, like the essential aspect of fertility is really like, how do we receive the energy,
Yeah.
around us.
Well, and I think too, it's helping you to connect more with your body. I think so many women, I
Mhm.
mean, I know myself up until just recently when I, approached my 30s, I never felt connected to my body. I never, well, first off, I never knew that we had 4 phases of our cycle. And then,
Mhm.
between the time I turned 29 to 30, I got really super invested in learning all about feminine health, and
Right.
now track my cycle and just know what every phase brings, and
Mhm.
know that my energy levels are going to fluctuate depending on what phase I'm in. And I think it's just I'm what you're doing and what you're really supporting women to do is to get more in touch with their body, because again, so many of us are so disconnected, and I would venture to say that's also part of the reason why sometimes it can be hard for women to go down that path of fertility, is because there's just this disconnect with the body. And I think once we come home to who we are and we know, we can give ourselves what we need and be more intuitive. I think that's where, some of the magic, so to speak,
Mhm.
comes into play.
For sure. Like, just that we are not, I mean, we should, all of us, not just women, like we all came from a womb.
Yeah.
So it feels like we should all know about just the seed cycle. Like that would be really important for, for everybody. Um, but also like the ways that we do relate to our bodies and our, whether it's our menstruation or our health, like our menstruation, the like continuum of our womanhood has been so medicalized,
Yeah.
like that we either kind of ignore it, we're like, okay, I got my period, stick a tampon in,
Right.
or it's just like a burden, or it's medicalized that when we're like, when there's a symptom, like our body is trying to express something to us, we're like, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with my body that needs to be fixed, rather than being like, oh, my body is communicating something with me. And like, how do I pay close attention? And I think if we had had like red tents and the kind of things where women would gather and really share and talk about and pass on this information, we would know about the phases of our cycle. We would
Yeah.
know the different things we could do to support during each phase. And instead, it's like, it's been kind of, I think, intentionally like made shameful or unclean or dirty at worst, and at best it's kind of like an annoying burden that like
Yeah.
all the commercials, it's like, oh, stick a tampon in so you could go horseback riding.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. No, I
yeah.
100% agree with that. And I would like to believe, I think just in the past, decade, from what I've seen, I feel we're moving in a different direction, which is incredible to see. It's
Mm.
about damn time, in my opinion.
For
Um,
sure.
and I just, again, it's one of those things where I'm so grateful for women like you who are
Mhm.
leading the charge in, making this knowledge accessible, one, but also um, sharing it in a space that is safe, and
Mhm.
where no question is silly or dumb or embarrassing. And I thank you, because you are one of,
Mhm.
you know very few people, I feel, at this point, but it's getting bigger,
Yeah.
that are really, changing the name of the game, so to speak, in terms of, what it means to be a woman, and to honor that, to, be proud of that, instead of, like you said, be shameful and feel embarrassed. um
Mhm.
so I just appreciate that, and what you're doing. And I would love your thoughts, your take on, just women, I guess, especially like you mentioned earlier, that are maybe looking to conceive, but they're older. They're
Mhm.
a little bit older than, say, the average person who is is typically trying to conceive. I know we kind of, the pendulum has swung to people having children a little bit later in life in the past 5 to 10 years or so.
Mhm.
But what would be maybe some of your advice to those women who are like, wow, like I still feel like the clock's ticking for me, and I really want this to be my path. What might you
Mm.
what might be some words of wisdom you could share with the women that are
Yeah.
listening?
Well, I will say, things do change, like it's not just like all of a sudden we hit a certain age and we're like, oh, everything's going downhill. But we do over time accumulate, all of like the habits and things we do over the years. So, if we're like really, really stressed, that impacts our body at 40 more than it does at 20, just because it's been 20 more years of stress. Poor eating, poor sleep habits, alcohol, these things do build up over time. One of the main things I recommend to do for everybody is a kind of liver cleanse. So like one of the first things we recommend is doing our detox tea, but really supporting the liver, because the liver processes all of our hormones, including cortisol. Like it just, all of our hormones are processed through the liver, and we're kind of living in like a toxic soup. I mean, that's just the reality of, our environment, our food.
Yeah.
um, Really reducing inflammation in our body would be another thing. Like most of us are walking around with like a lot of inflammatory processes. So I recommend really looking at like an anti-inflammatory, maybe an autoimmune kind of paleo diet.
Yeah.
um I just think it's like one of the things that we can do that is not expensive. It doesn't require a ton of testing. We can just Google it. What's an anti-inflammatory autoimmune paleo diet? Usually it's like removing grains and legumes, dairy. So those are two things, like really supporting our liver, really reducing inflammation. I always say like inflammation and optimized fertility are like at opposite ends of the spectrum. And I do see fertility as a spectrum. I also just heard, like, I've been hearing from more and more people that women are like, I went to my doctor and I've been trying for 6 months and they recommended IVF. And like this woman was 34 and had a kid and was trying for 6 months. And so I do think that a lot of people are getting pushed towards IVF, where not only do they not need it, but introducing all of those medications into their system is actually not the best way for them to get pregnant. Like it's going to tax their liver, especially if they tend to have like an estrogen dominance, or it's just maybe not ideal for them. So
Yeah.
I do think that getting some tests, like I'm not opposed to Western medicine at all. And I actually think knowing what our baseline is can help us.
Yeah.
So getting like a day 2 or day 3 estrogen, FSH, and LH test, it would be really supportive. Knowing what our cortisol levels are at would
Mm-hmm.
be so basically like our
Yeah.
hormones are here. What trumps our hormones is cortisol levels.
Yep.
And what trumps cortisol levels is oxytocin levels. So that's actually really interesting, because when we start having this fertility issue, we often like lose the joy in life. We like lose the joy in sex. We lose the joy in life because we're just like, oh my God, and that is like
Yeah.
bonkers for our oxytocin levels, which is like cuddle, love, connect. Our hypothalamic pituitary axis can just go like haywire. So, I definitely am not one of those people that's like, oh, don't stress out, you'll get pregnant. Like that's the worst thing you could say to someone. But I
Yeah.
will say that stress is really, really, really challenging also for optimizing fertility.
Yeah.
So those tests that I mentioned, and then I'd also probably recommend a testosterone test,
Okay.
as well as a like a day 21 or post-ovulatory, 7 days post-ovulation progesterone test, and a hysterosalpingogram or an HSG test, just to see what's happening with your tubes if they're clear. So
Okay.
that would be like, especially if you're above 37, and you've been trying for a while and you really just don't know,
Yeah.
just getting that baseline of tests and agreeing to like get the results without being like, oh my God, now I have to do IVF. Like there's so many things that I think um, I know that you can do
Yeah.
to support and improve your fertility without resorting to IVF,
Yeah.
or IUI even. And unfortunately, like as soon as women get tested, often they're just like in the cycle of then like looking for the solution that's along that same Western medical path.
Yeah.
And um, I also think like that is a path that people take. There's no shame in that path. Like if IUI, IVF, those are your choices, like no shame in that at all. But I also think there's a real opportunity. Like this is the part that like brings me so much joy and makes me feel so alive, is like there's such an opportunity in the fertility journey that if we really are like open to being like, what is here for me? Like what is the like magic, the gold in this journey,
Yeah.
that I could glean about like myself and my life and my purpose, rather than just like, oh my God, my body is a problem that needs to be fixed.
Mm.
If we just like shift it to be like, like my body is asking me to pay attention and to like I don't know, just like deeply sense and honor what is what is being presented. And it just feels like even just the energy and like me speaking that, like
Yeah.
I feel that it's different. Like my
Yeah.
body is something that needs to be fixed and it's broken and there's something wrong, versus like, whoa, there's like a magical opportunity for here to like know myself and know my womb and like the longings of my womb's capacity to create. Like it's just it's like one is like expansive and uplifting, the other is like dip, shut down.
Yeah. Changing your mindset. And I think it goes along
Mhm.
with what you've been sharing too, which is that stress factor, right? Like, I
Mhm.
mean, the more we try and pick and prod and poke at like, well, why isn't this happening? The more stressed we become. And I know that's easier said than done to be like, well, then just stop stressing, right?
Right.
But when you are, this is something you desire and you
Mhm.
can't figure out why it's not happening, it's kind
Mhm.
of almost inevitable that you start to just naturally, I mean, the way I guess the way society brings us up is that we just naturally then kind of gravitate towards that more negative mindset of like,
Mhm.
it must be me. Like, what is wrong with me? Why me? Instead of, to your point, reframing and being like, okay,
Mhm.
we're going to figure this out together. Like my body and my mind, we're going to figure out what's going on. And this is, to your
Mhm.
point, a great way for me to know myself better and to honor myself and to
Yeah.
take this journey, however, long or short it may be, it's the destined path for me,
Mhm.
to get to the end,
Mhm.
result and destination.
Yeah, and people really like often people really do poo-poo the mindset thing, like, oh, that's just new agey. But they're actually, what I love about science is that it's actually like, I mean, it hasn't even begun to catch up with like the magic of our body,
Yeah.
but it is catching up. So like things like where we used to just talk about like trauma, like intergenerational trauma, which was like, that's some weird shit. Oops, sorry, I curse. That's weird. Now, like epigenetics, it's like, no, we actually do hold the traumas of our ancestors in ourselves. And it's a whole like scientific study.
Yeah.
And the same with like, how we are, whether we're positive or negative in life, that
Mhm.
actually does impact our hypothalamus, which is our entire hormone ovulatory system. It's
Yeah.
like, are we saying yes to life or are we saying no to life? It impacts our entire cascade of hormones. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
just love your advice too for women as well. I mean, that play that back a couple times, ladies, because that
Mhm.
is just gold advice for, just testing wise, but also just listening to your body. So I appreciate you sharing that. I'm also really curious. I mean, I told you before we hopped on the mic, I have so many questions for you because I'm just so fascinated. It's just such a cool and interesting topic, but I would love to know, you have these guided fertility womb meditations. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that. Like, That sounds incredible.
Yeah, so they are for different phases of your cycle.
Yeah.
So I guess what would be helpful is to talk about, because so many of us don't really know that we have different phases of our cycle, or if we do, they're just kind of more like, well, this is the time that our follicles are growing, and this is the time that we're ovulating.
Yeah.
Um, but what feels important to share, which is kind of what I share in the meditation a little bit, is what like spiritually and emotionally and energetically is happening during each phase of the cycle. So I'll kind of talk about it in a linear way, but recognize that we're cyclical. Like this is all um it's all just like, cyclical. So we kind of access this over and over and over. So there's opportunities to really, I say, like deepen in each time. So during our blood phase, when we're bleeding, that has a lot to do with the metal. It's also really cool to look at, like, we are just a microsystem of nature. So I'll relate this to what's happening in nature. So like right now, if you're in the northern hemisphere, we're in the fall. This is the autumn. This is the metal element. So the leaves are falling from the trees. We're kind of like releasing. And this is also what's happening through the blood phase of our body when we're shedding. We're basically getting rid of what we no longer need.
Mm.
And the metal element is also related to our lungs and our large intestine. So inspiration and it's basically like the two organs in our body that are most closely related to what is other. So our boundaries with the outside world, like we breathe in from outside and then we let go of what we don't need, what is not us,
Yeah.
and get rid of it. So it's literally the time when we get rid of all the SHIT that we don't need. And when we're releasing in our blood, we can also release like all that's not serving us. So our womb holds so much. I'm really going through this quickly, but our womb holds so much energy. And I do like a womb clearing meditation where it's really like kind of gathering up all the stories that we hold in our womb, whether they're stories about our sexuality or our experience as a woman, um, words. Sometimes women will be doing this and they'll just hear words that will come up in there, like
Mm.
slut or, bitch or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, who does she think she is? Those kind of things. And we just gather them up and really let them go, like really let them go. So it has a lot to do with what we inhale, what we exhale, what we get rid of. And we can just think of it often as like the leaves on the trees, like we're just releasing them. They're not serving us anymore.
Yeah.
So kind of making space, clearing. Then the next phase, we can say we're going into like the follicular phase. In Chinese medicine, we would say that's the yin phase. So that's really when our follicles are growing and we want them to get ripe and juicy. So this is a much cooler phase of our cycle where we're wanting to do more cooling things like cucumbers and green juices and things that will cool us energetically. Yin is cool, it's more estrogenic. And that's also when we really, so for instance, like a lot of women who have high FSH, this phase, this yin dynamic is challenging. So I won't go into high FSH, but it's also often like there's too much heat in the body, not enough cooling, not enough nourishing.
Mm.
And so a lot of the meditation here has to do with really like what is preventing us from surrendering. Like you think about yin, it's like water, just like a water filling the vessel. So it's almost like trusting that we will be held, that we will be deeply held and supported so that we can just open up and receive, because that's what we want our follicles to do. Like often with high FSH, our follicles are like shriveled and tight and they're like not receiving. So it's like, what can we do to open and make them just plump and juicy? It's really like receiving and like receiving life, letting life to flow through us and letting ourselves receive the energy of another. I also say like this is big during this time, but like if our energy is a certain way, all of our cells are that way too. So we can't expect our follicles to get like ripe and juicy and like abundant when we're like restricting in any way, whether it's like our food intake, if we're feeling shamed about our weight, if we're like trying to be smaller, which
Yeah.
so many women are because we're women on this planet,
Yeah.
So like there's a lot there. Then we go into the chi phase, which is chi is just like the energy that moves through our body.
Mm.
Um, So we really want the energy in our body to be quick moving, like just air. So there's a few things that could happen in here. I won't go into too much detail, but we could either get chi stagnation, which does have to do with stress and our liver's capacity to process through things. So if we're super stressed and super uptight, we can't expect our egg to have that like potent, what is the word, potent burst of energy needed to ovulate. So we might get either like a slow to rise ovulation or like a kind of extended, slow to rise BBT chart. We can also have like a misting. So if we have PCOS, or we tend to have like an insulin resistance, we might kind of, instead of our chi, our energy being like clear, like air, it might actually be like foggy. I almost compare it to like we're in England and we're kind of like moving through that pea soup. So like everything in our body is kind of moving through there.
Yeah.
Like that way. So we might just not ovulate, or we might have PCOS. This is where we might have those excess androgens or LH that are sometimes the factors that go along with PCOS. And just energetically, there's a lot there that we could talk about. Often there's an estrogen dominance, but the thing energetically that I see come up, and nobody should take this on if it doesn't feel resonant, but I say it because enough women experiences it. Why can't I say that? Experience it.
There you go. We
There
got
could be the energetic of shame, which tends us to shut down a little bit, and also feels like a boundary being created between us and other.
it.
So like something that can happen with boundaries is important here. So like doing work around that. And then we move into the yang phase, which is post ovulation. So this is the luteal phase. And this is where in the yang phase, we want our progesterone to be higher than our estrogen. So we really need warming energy in this phase. It's also where we feel the heart fire connecting with the kidney fire, almost to create like that hearth in our womb. So a lot of work around joy. Do we let ourselves experience joy and play? But also, I mean, just this is such an easy tip that I could give you guys, is just warming foods during this time. So if you're raw vegan and you're having trouble getting pregnant, like have some cooked foods, like bone broth would be amazing during this time. Adding ginger. My womb warming tea has cinnamon and some like more warming herbs in it. So just really warming our womb. Our digestive organs sit so close to our reproductive organs. So if you're someone who's constantly having like iced smoothies and iced lattes and raw salads, and that, if you think about what happens when you go outside in the cold, everything tightens up. So when we are putting cold into our body, our reproductive organs and our digestive organs, they can tighten up too. And so we really want our womb to be warm and supple and receptive, like so able to kind of invite in, hopefully our fertilized embryo. So I know that was super fast and I went through that like,
I loved it though.
and then there's so much there within each phase that we could really be doing to support all that. But that was like the basics that I could give you.
That's incredible. So do those meditations, are those part of, I know we're going to get to this in a moment because I want to ask you, so maybe I'll just start that question now and then you can answer it. I know you have some groups that women can be a part of, your
Yeah.
Facebook community, and then you also have the Whole Woman Collective. So
Mhm.
are the meditations something that women experience in both of those groups, or can women also do these meditations even if they're
Mhm.
not part of the groups?
Right. So when I first put everything online, initially you couldn't even buy the products without doing the course. So the course is called the Fertile Mama Method,
Ah,
and the products like came with it. Because I really, really wanted women to like understand why they were doing what they were doing. And like, it's so important for women to know this, that I was like, you can't drink the tea felt a little bit like the soup. You ever see that Seinfeld, like the soup Nazi, like no
Yep.
tea for you.
Yeah. Yes.
But then I was like, that shifted, and it was like, okay, now you can just buy the tea and buy your products. And, if you don't want to learn and you just want to drink the tea, like that's available. We're trying to just meet people where they're at. But there's always resources to go deeper. So I do have this course that was initially like just those things I put on,
Sure.
which included the meditation, but it also included like the actual physical things to do each phase of your cycle. And then the more that I kind of learned and explored and did my own work around this, mine wasn't fertility work, but it was just, like I said, it's not just fertility, it's about our
Right.
actual creative spark and the energy we're in our womb. I was doing my own work at the same time. So I actually then added to that. And then there's like going deeper sections for each phase. So there's like going the main stuff you should do for the yin phase, and then also like the going deeper, which is like all of the energetic and the spiritual and the how are we as women on the planet and where's our wild woman. And so
Yeah.
that's actually my favorite part, but not everybody wants to learn that and go there, and I respect that. So as far as the groups, there's the main Facebook group, which is free, which is the Be Fertile Facebook group. I think there's like 10,000 women in there.
Yeah.
Such an amazing supportive group.
Awesome.
And then the Whole Woman Collective, if you sign up for a year, you actually get the Fertile Mama method for free. So that includes the meditations, that includes all the going deeper.
Cool.
And I did that because in the main group, basically the questions are like, what teas do I drink when? And how do I do this? And when do I do when? And I was like, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I really want to talk about like all of the other things, because I do see fertility as just related to like our existence,
Yeah.
basically. So I wanted to talk about all the other things. So I really don't talk about just fertility in the Whole Woman Collective. I have members on, different guests on, and we talk about, usually we relate it to fertility, but it's about, like I just had someone on who really talked about like the ripple, like it was about womb health, but it was also about the ripple of our birth imprints and our menarche imprints, which is our first period, that often there's ripples that relate to how we experience fertility. And then we had someone on who was talking about money and abundance, and that's like how do we perceive having, like that also has a lot to do with our fertility. So there's lots of different topics, and it's not like what tea do you drink when, it's
Right.
more like how is our experience as women on this planet. Like everything's affecting everything. So the Whole Woman Collective is a newer group. I just started it really because I felt like a deep longing for sisterhood and community in a place where I could show up, where I didn't need to be the expert and know everything. So I really present and show up differently in that group, where it's more like I'm just a woman here, and I don't want to be the expert, because I feel a lot more alive when I'm, like I said, in exploration mode, where I can be with the not knowing. Because it's really boring to be with the things that like, like I know all
Right.
that. I
Yeah.
want to be really with the things that I don't know. And like for me, if we think about the womb, it is the darkness. Like it's the part of ourself that is the most in the dark. So being with the not knowing is so much about like being with our what are we holding in our womb. So that group is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's starting slowly, because I do have a little bit of like, there's a part about being visible and going out into the world, and so I'm like, let's do this really small group. So
Mhm.
it's been great. It's just been like a few women on a call, and we really just like I'm just there to be with the not knowing as much as anybody else, rather than to be like, I'm the expert here and listen
Right.
to what I say. So it's a cool group.
That's incredible. And I love that too. I feel like that's how I am too. I feel like that's the best way to be is to constantly be the learner, and
Mhm.
just soak up the knowledge of others and the experiences of others, because then it helps you to relate not only your experiences, but to then better help other people. So
Mhm.
I love that. I was going to ask this, but now I feel like I know the answer to this question, but I'm still going to ask it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like, might there be sometime in the future, like a chance where you write a book? I mean, God, I feel like that.
Well,
Woo.
I will just say, so what's next for me that feels alive? Because I'm
Yeah,
44. I'm like, ooh, the shifts are probably happening. So like I did the exploration into fertility
yeah,
and really like relating it on this like sacred spiritual level. I feel like that energetically feels like it's coming, that exploration for me, like
yeah,
that like menopause is not the like horrible dark
yeah,
end of life, that like the end of our femininity that they say, they
yeah.
say whoever
Right,
they are.
right.
But actually there's like deep, I think sacredness in it, and probably like a fire that comes that is just like a burning away of all the things. So I'm like kind of gearing up for that. That feels like my next work. We'll
Awesome.
see. I tend not to like do like I tend to do things because I need to do them for myself, and
Uh-huh.
then it's just like I like to share. So I also I'll just say this past year I ended my 20-year marriage. I moved, I started over. I had a breast cancer scare, like I had atypical cells in my breast that I have since cleared. And there's been like this whole awakening around just sexuality and energy, and so I do feel like there might be a book or two in there,
Oh,
but it'll probably be after my kids are like out of the house, and so I probably have a few years to go. I have
that's
like 7 years while they're still here, so I'm enjoying them here
good.
before they're out of the house. If I don't know if kids can like leave houses these days, the
Correct.
cost of
How long
living is
will
so
they
high. They
be?
might just live in my basement forever. We'll see.
Might be. Well, we will look forward to that whenever that comes. But I mean,
Mhm.
this, Ariel, this has been so incredible.
Appreciate it
I
too.
just thank you so much for coming on, speaking your wisdom and just the truth, to be quite honest, of what it means to be a woman, and just gosh, you're just a breath of fresh air that I think everyone
Yeah.
needs. How can women connect with you? If they want, of course, the website, but any other ways that women can connect with you? Of course, obviously the groups and Facebook group.
Mhm.
But if
Yeah,
if
I would
women
say
want
Wisdom of the Womb online. I don't do any one-on-one work anymore these days, but definitely our Moon Sisters, like they will connect with me if there's a question they don't know or if they can't answer, and they're amazing. The
to,
most like interactive with me is the Whole Woman Collective. That's really where I go on, and I am there twice a month and just showing up like this to talk and have a conversation. I will also say I appreciate all of your praise, but it also feels like I feel so honored. Like I was truly gifted with this knowledge that I've learned through amazing teachers and amazing books and amazing women that have come before. And it feels really like a privilege to be able to share it and to have the platform, because it doesn't feel like mine. I feel like I kind of put it into my language and tried to make it accessible, so that I am glad that I was able to do. But it also feels like this is our birthright, and it is thousands and thousands of years old, and it does feel like it was kind of intentionally removed from our reaches. And so to be able to share it, like to have access to it, feels like what a gift. And then to be able to share it, it feels like an honor. So that is kind of my mission. Like this isn't mine, but I will share it.
well,
So
I'm gonna send all the good juju and vibes back to you, because
thank
I know you're not trying to take credit for it,
you.
but I mean, truly, not everybody is called to do what you're doing,
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
clearly are called. I can see the passion in you, and I mean, gosh, what a gift you are to this world to be able to spread that and share it. So just
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, I
absolutely.
appreciate you. Yeah, I feel really like devoted to what I call the feminine. So it feels like, yeah, that feels like a devotional practice. So
Well,
if I make it about me, then it gets something else. So it's like, it's not about me. So
oh,
yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.
absolutely. Thank you again for coming on. It's been a
So
pleasure.
happy to. My pleasure too.